Perfect. Now, officially welcome everyone to our third edition of Cabaret Conversations through the 92nd Street Y School of Music. I'd like to start out by thanking Jana Statland, the director of the 92nd Street Y School of Music, for her encouragement and support of this program as it continues to grow. Today, my guests are two amazing artists in their own right, but also reviewers and critics, and now authors of the fantastic book, So You Want to Sing Cabaret. So I'm going to introduce them to you now. First, we have David Sabella. David is an internationally recognized master teacher of musical theater and contemporary commercial music vocal technique. He is the two-term president of the New York Singing Teachers Association. And in 1996, he originated the role of Mary Sunshine in the Broadway revival of Chicago. David, how are you this evening?
Hi, thank you very much. I'm very good, thank you.
I'm very excited to have you with us. And of course, your co-author is with us this evening, Sue Matsuki. Sue is a 3-time MAC Award winner. She has won both as a vocalist and as a songwriter. She is the inaugural winner of the Mabel Mercer Julie Wilson Award and was chosen by Julie Wilson herself. And she's also previously served on the MAC Manhattan Association of Cabaret Board of Directors. Hi, Sue. How are you?
Hello. How are you, Michael?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to have you both here. I so thoroughly enjoyed reading this book. The perspective that the two of you bring, but also the in-depth interviews with important people in the art form. We'll talk more about that as we go on. But I want to start with letting each of you say a little about your own history in the art form of cabaret. So Sue, why don't you go first?
Wow, I've been doing this. I just celebrated my 33rd year last year at Don't Tell Mamas on September in 2019 of actually performing at Don't Tell Mama, but I've actually been doing cabaret for 35 years. I started down at the Village Gate. We had kind of a rehearsed open mic there with a troupe of singers that I really miss and love. And Sidney Meyer was the very first person to give me a booking. I went up to audition for him, scared out of my wits. Back in the day, you'll remember, maybe not, you're much younger than I am, but we had to actually audition in the room, go with our musical director, get up on stage, and I remembered singing. I sang I'm a Fool to Want You, and it was like, I'm a fool to want you. I was so nervous. And Sidney's like, Susan, it's only me. Take a breath and relax. You know? And I did, and for whatever reason, he booked me. He did, and here we are 33 years later. And the night of that show, Michael, I walked out, and I was hugging, it may have been Jackie Draper, who's with us tonight. I was hugging someone. As I'm hugging them, I see my posters up on the infamous wall at Don't Tell Mama, and it killed me. It was like, that was, next to the Julie Wilson Award, that was the next best thing that ever happened to me, to finally make that wall. So I've been doing this a long time, and I love the genre because of the intimacy, which is a great deal of what we talk about in terms of lyric connection and how the genre is different from all the other kind of live musical performance genres. So,
and we'll get into that quite a bit this evening. David, how did you become involved in the art form of cabaret?
Well, hearing Sue, it becomes immediately obvious why I had to ask her to be my co-author for the book, because my route to cabaret was much more circuitous and not nearly as long. I first started to consider doing cabaret shows as part of my tenure with the Broadway show Chicago. When you're in a Broadway show, then you want to do a cabaret show. And to be honest, back then in the 90s and the early 2000s, I had not one idea what I was doing. I just put up these shows. I did several at that time. Then I sort of left that area of my life, left the show also in favor of raising children, and came back at a certain point, I think about 2015, not too long ago, and then got this contract to write this book. And at first I thought, no, I'm not going to do that.
No.
Because...
Thank you, no.
Thank you, no. Because I'm not an expert in cabaret. But the publisher, I had contributed to a chapter of another book that they had done, and they had known that I had done some cabaret, and it's from a voice teacher type point of view. It's sponsored by the National Association of Teachers of Singing, of which I'm a prominent member and a presenter, etc. So they kept kind of on me about it, and I finally said yes, but I said, I'm not going to come off like an expert on this. I'm going to talk to the experts, and I'm going to get you a book that is straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And they agreed to that, thank God, and that's how the book came about. And Sue was one of the first people I met at that time after getting the contract. Richard Skipper, in fact, introduced us. And as soon as I met her, I thought, oh, yes, I need this person in my life now doing this. And so we formed this collaboration that has been fantastic.
It really has been a joy.
Yeah.
Well, how did the structure of the book come about? You said that it's slightly different from some of the other books in the series. This is the 20th book in the series, correct?
The 20th and so far last book in the series.
What were the other books that you contributed to, David?
I contributed a chapter to So You Want to Sing CCM, which is contemporary commercial music. And again, when they asked me to contribute a chapter to that, my immediate response was no, because my life was sort of raging at that time with the divorce and all sorts of things that it really was not on my plate. But the series editor was kind of insistent, and so I wrote off this chapter and I sent it to them, and I really did not know what this series was at the time, and I really did not know much about the other books. And so that book came out in April of 2018, and when I got the book, I thought, oh, I really should have paid attention to this, because
would have taken it much more seriously.
Really, because it was a very substantial and scholarly book on contemporary commercial music, and it featured 12 international pedagogues who have put forth the methodology for teaching contemporary commercial music, and I was featured as one of them. So when I saw myself listed with these other 11 amazing voice teachers, international voice teachers, I was very, very honored. So when they came about with the Cabaret book, I knew that it had to be serious, and I knew it had to be a substantial work, and I just thought, okay, I've been asked to do this, so I'm going to say yes, because I was asked to do this. I'm a sort of big believer in saying yes when you're asked. Things come in with divine providence,
I completely agree.
Yeah. I mean, I had left the university that I was teaching at that spring. The spring of 2018 was my last semester there after like 10 years of teaching there, because I wanted to make room in my life for something else to happen. And I thought that was going to be more performing. But 7 days after the semester ended, they called me about this book, and I thought, well, I asked for something to come in, so here it is.
There it was.
Yeah.
So with the structure of the book, are the other books as many interviews as yours is?
No, I would say not. The structure of the book, chapter by chapter, is the education chapters, the information chapters, are different than the interview chapters. The history and education chapters and craft and business chapters are structured in a similar way to some of the other books, 4 or 5 subcategories and 3 categories within those. It's laid out very easy to read and understand as a textbook. It can be dense, but it's laid out really easy to understand on purpose. The interviews are simply an interview structure, and who we interviewed. We tried to take a wide swath of what was happening now in the cabaret industry. Who are the main star celebrities, let's say, award-winning singers, award-winning, recent award-winning directors and music directors, who are the heads of the organizations, Mabel Mercer, Mac, American
the people who are the core of the art form, and also have kind of the baton right now to help move it forward.
Right,
Exactly.
industry leaders and professionals, yeah.
Exactly. The core audience for the book is, of course, singers, young singers.
I think that's Bobby, maybe.
Okay.
Oh,
So,
Bobby just came in.
Bobby
Yeah.
just came
I'll
on.
mute
Maybe
her.
she needs to.
Welcome,
Right.
Bobby.
Mute her.
I got her muted.
all right. So the core audience for the book is the young singer, like the high school or collegiate
Mhm.
singer, but also their voice teacher who does not know what's specifically unique about this genre and how to teach into this genre. And you'd be amazed how many teachers don't know this
Have
genre.
you, as the book has started to come out, and I know you've done some virtual conferences already to present the book, have you gotten that response from other voice teachers around the country and around the world in response to the book that they didn't have as much of a grasp of this art form as they maybe thought?
I think when they saw the video that we did, that we put together for Nats, because we were going to do a book release show, and we were going to have some of these people, interview them on stage, and pretty much a similar format to what we actually presented for Nats. But I think the teachers were surprised, one, at the production value of what we presented in relation to that was kind of sort of what cabaret is right now in this new way of having to perform and everything. I think what surprised a lot of the teachers were the how, wouldn't you say, David, the how-to chapters that we included, because they're in the previous books there's not a lot of specific how-to to the specific genre. There's technical stuff and there's historic stuff, and the interviews and I think some of the practical how-tos were what made our book longer and a little
Yeah.
bit different from the series. But
Yeah,
they
it
had,
was-
you know, so you want to sing gospel and blues and contemporary music and bluegrass. I mean, it's an amazing 20-book series.
Yeah.
Amazing
I
series.
think a lot of the other books are vocally technical,
Yes.
right? But not genre. Like we have how to produce your own show, how to
Right.
promote your own show.
There's this section of the book that really is from you have
Business.
the idea to do a show, the
Yeah.
process through talking to your track director
Right.
on opening night.
That's right.
You
That's
go
right.
step by step.
Yeah. And nobody had ever done that. Nobody in the series. But I have to say, a classic example of this, you know, voice teachers primarily still, let's say, I would say 80% at this point, if not 90, 80% are those people who have studied a classical genre, their experiences in opera, oratorio, and choral music. They don't know a lot of music theater, really. I mean, 80%. They now know a little bit more, but the old guard is still very strong. And they don't know American Songbook. When I interviewed Michael Feinstein for the book on American Songbook, and I was very excited to tell my editor, and I said, listen, we got a lot of information about how the American Songbook is expanding and what it's now including. He said, wait a minute. First, you have to define American Songbook. I went, really? He goes, yes.
Wow, yeah.
He said, the target audience for this
Yeah.
book will not know what you're talking about unless you spell it out, what it is, the dates, the composers, the whole thing. So
Some
we
of the
had to
things
go
in the
through it.
glossary shocked us, didn't it? When they were saying, yeah,
Yes.
we know we have to put that in the glossary with an explanation. We're like, yeah, really?
Yes.
It was
Well,
amazing.
what's an example of one of those, Sue?
Oh, my goodness.
Moonlighting.
Moonlighting and what are some of the other ones? Piano bar and nightclub and I mean things that we would assume people would have some general idea of what they are, and there's like no, you know. But the biggest one obviously was the American Songbook. We're
American
like,
Songbook,
yeah, wow is right?
No,
So there's a need
it's-
for this book clearly.
It's very thick. It's one of their largest books, and it is, as blessedly, I'm happy to report, I think it is an entertaining read because of
I kind of
interviews.
rushed through it. It
Yeah.
kept me turning.
Oh, I'm very
good,
glad.
good.
But it
Good.
is also a scholarly look at the cabaret industry in this part of this century. And it includes history all the way back from its origins in the 1700s, taking us up to kind of dovetailing James Cavan's book, Intimate
Yes.
Nights, which I
I-
also mentioned.
Reading
And
your
also-
book, that was a thing that hit me. It was like if any college or university program has been debating a class on the art form of cabaret, these two books are the text.
That's
James
right.
Gavin's Intimate Nights and
That's
yours, So You Want to Sing Cabaret, are the two textbooks that must be used for a class of that nature.
That's right. That's right. And the scholarly information in the book, things that the editor insisted I put in the book, that we put in the book, things like information on the Yale conference that is honestly no longer in existence, but they wanted that information. They wanted the historical perspective of what had gone on and what this genre, what it has unfolded to be now. Like its early origins and how it has progressed today.
So as you were starting the process, David, who was the first person you asked and sat down to interview?
I'm going to tell you, the first person I sat down to interview did not make it in the book.
Okay.
Very, very truthfully, and God bless him, he was fantastic. Richard J. Alexander was my first interview, and I was so bad at it that I didn't know what to ask, I have to tell you. With great respect, his interview didn't wind up in the book. Also, just technically, we were at West Bank, where I did all of my interviews, and the sound on the recording wasn't right, and I couldn't hear over the restaurant noise, and so unbelievably and regrettably, his interview did not get in the book. Of course, he is a director and has worked with Barbra Streisand and Bette Midler. I was really anxious to get his input. The second person, I think, was maybe KT. Another heavy hitter where I thought I really have to get this right.
She was the first guest for this series.
Yeah, and luckily, the people who do cabaret love cabaret so much that they really know how to talk about it. They really know what to say about it.
Yeah,
And
while you were
KT's
doing her, I was doing Sydney. We had
Sydney,
kind of divvied up, and as you said, Michael, Sydney, separate from my having interviewed him, he's one of the most delightful people in the business, so his chapter is one of my favorite chapters because it's someone that's been doing this like KT for a long, long time and has a real passion and love for this beautiful
And his
way
knowledge
of
coming
performing.
from both a performer and as a booking manager for over 30 years. I often say you can't be part of the cabaret world and not have come across and worked with Sydney.
Right.
And if you're lucky enough to have done your first show at Mama's, to get, as Sue and I have talked about outside of this chat before, the infamous Sydney talk,
Right.
which so much of what is in that Sydney talk is also represented in his chapter, in his interview.
Yeah. I will tell you, going back to, you asked me, my early days in cabaret, I don't consider this my early days in cabaret, but honestly, I guess it was because I worked with Sydney when we worked together in La Grande Chaîne. And La Grande Chaîne started at the ballroom and performed, in very small clubs for a long time. So, and this was, late 80s.
For our listeners who don't know, what was the Grand Chaîne?
La Grande Chaîne is for opera, what the Ballet Trocaderos is for ballet. And it was all men, all sopranos and altos, and we did the great scenes of grand opera in parody. And Bruce Hopkins, who is a very well-known cabaret director, was our first Sylvia Bills. Peter Schlosser directed the group, another wonderful cabaret director, who Sydney mentions in his chapter. And so it started right out of cabaret, like Forever Plaid, like Nonsense. The Grande Chaîne was born at the ballroom, I think, and so that was one of my earliest entries into performing after college. Was doing La Grande Chaîne and meeting all of these people at that time and not realizing who I was meeting, to be honest.
So as you were doing your interviews, and we'll get more into big moments in the book, but for each of you doing your interviews and in the moment doing them, which interview and what answer gave you your biggest personal aha moment about the art form?
Well, I think overall, David and I, whenever we come back to each other after having done one of our individual interviews and coming back to discuss it, and of course we read each other's and comment and edit and all that, what wasn't surprising, but what was clearly the point of most people's explanation is the whole concept of lyric connection came over and over and up over and over and over again in terms of that's what separates us from the men from the women in this business. It was really fun to see that, and then to hear in the video that we created what cabaret means to me, when we asked our artists to say what cabaret meant to them, a lot of it was surrounding the personal moment of being on stage and having that one-on-one connection for that brief moment. So I had a lot of little epiphany moments, but I've been doing this for so long that like I knew that, I knew that, I knew that, but I had to be careful not to assume everybody else knew that based on what David and I found out about our audience of who
Right,
this book was
right.
going to be read by, not knowing these things. So I couldn't kind of not take anything anyone said seriously just because I thought I knew that already. I
Right.
wasn't writing for me. I'm writing for someone who doesn't
Right.
know what this is.
People who don't know the art.
No,
The
but
art
by
form,
the
yeah.
time we were done and were in final process with the publisher, I turned to Sue and I went, I just think it's boring. I just think everyone's going to know this. And meanwhile, the editor and the publisher were literally
Moments
calling
every
me with
five.
like, oh
Yeah.
my God, we had no idea. Oh my God, this is great material. Oh my gosh, So we were getting that kind of validation. The aha moment for me came in the realization, well, first off, this book is geared towards singing in cabaret. So you want to sing cabaret. So we couldn't really interview the MCs, the hosts, the female impersonators, the character impersonation people. That's not what the book is about. So we had to stay within the scope of that. The aha moment for me came in talking with a lot of our interviewees, some of whom are not even in the book, who themselves had not made a distinction or didn't know a distinction between certain genres, between cabaret and nightclub or cabaret and music theater. And the fact that there were people singing in high levels who hadn't considered a specific technique for a live intimate audience, for a small audience. And that's really, I think, one of the points of the whole book is that when you're singing in a room of 40 or 90 people, it's very different than singing in a theater of 500. When you're singing to people in a cabaret room, when you're in Don't Tell Mamas, you are looking at everyone's face. You're looking at everyone's eyes. You are connecting with them. It is very personal. It is exposing. It is nerve-wracking. You don't hide behind a fourth wall or a character, and that in and of itself is a cabaret technique that
Well, you
is
spent
unique to the genre.
you spend a lot of time in the book asking your interviewees and the two of you yourself, defining the cabaret performance style.
Right.
Did you talk a little bit more about that? What you found and the point you came to with that?
Well, I'll start, but I'll hand it off to Sue. Cabaret performance. I think Lorna left both in our book release movie and in her forward said it really well. It's extremely scary. You are completely exposed. There are great stars who could not contemplate doing it. Couldn't contemplate really doing it. There are people who are Broadway stars who think they're doing it because they're at 54 and they're singing a set, but
Right.
they never really make that connection. They never really look at people in the eye and say, hey, I'm here and you're here, and this is a moment that will never happen again.
I
And-
found both I think Lena Petrakis and Natalie Douglas said it in the book, and it was I had never thought of it this way, but thinking, if you're coming from an acting standpoint, which many of us in cabaret do, we come from being trained as musical theater actors, and then we find the art form, but looking at the audience as your silent scene partner.
Right.
Yes.
And that for me was a bit of an aha moment reading.
Well,
Yes.
some of the chapters we went through explained the different ways of connecting to a lyric, be it subtext, be it the last thing said to you, be it where you are physically and emotionally, and when you come into a room feeling angry, and how do you use that. So we go into different ways of harnessing the energy to then focus on what the real moment's going to be of you stepping on the stage. And I think what I really love about the book and about what I love about cabaret is this, you do all this technique, you learn, you sing, you take your
Mhm.
voice lessons, you get your charts arranged, you meet with your director, you do what they tell you to do, and then the minute you step on the stage, it's no longer about you.
Yeah.
Right.
It is completely and totally about the 50 to 90 people that are sitting in front of you that paid their good $20, $25 to come in and spend some time with you.
Mhm.
And now it you have to kind of go to your muscle memory of everything that you've been working on and all this connection and lyric and blah 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 blah, and now you're just delivering it forward with the hope that it's received. And David and I talked at great length about this at the beginning of the book when we were talking about my teaching approach and
Mhm.
how he teaches his legit sounds and songs, and the difference between teaching vocals versus teaching cabaret and doing a show. I often recommend people to meet with 3 or 4 directors that they have seen direct other shows, or 3 or 4 musical directors, and see what kind of jives with them and whose show they really liked, to find that
Mhm.
magic team that's going to create this moment for you. And also be true to your own energy. Don't let anybody manipulate you or convince you to do something that doesn't feel like it's really true to who you are or what that song means to you. Because you know what, I can sing it from a there's this funny story I tell about, it's not in the book, but Trudy Mann, one of my dearest friends, I sang Almost Over You, and she comes up to me and she said, Susie, honey, are you okay? Are you and Kenro okay? And I'm like, yeah, we're fine. And she said that particular song, and I said, Trudy, that's about my battle with chocolate. It's a song about food. So my subtext doesn't really
Right.
matter,
Yeah.
but it translated. And maybe she was having some issues with her husband at the time, and that's how she
Yeah.
filtered it. So that at that point, you just got to get out of the way and do what you do, and then see how it's received and how it's filtered through the people who are in front of you.
Right.
That's like a big thing for me. I love when I see a singer, even in the moment on stage singing, and you can tell that they're like,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, there's some noise here going on. Somebody's like drilling outside.
Drilling,
I'm
yeah.
going to put myself on mute until I speak again, so that you don't have to listen to
Okay.
this. Okay.
I'll say that, oh, wow. um, I'll say that this idea of not having to prove that you know how to sing
Mhm.
is something very beautiful and wonderful in cabaret, in concert performance, where you are the main artist. So many people get up and strive to prove that they know how to do what it is they're actually in the act of doing. Well, we've already paid money. We are going to assume that you know how to do this.
Mhm.
Trying to prove to us that you can do it by singing that really high note, or just, whatever it is, it very often gets in the way. It creates more problems than
I
it solves.
I love how much time you spend in the book on that thought of over singing in the world
Yeah,
of cabaret,
yeah,
which people don't think of.
yeah,
With the students I've worked with, I have to spend so much time going, you don't need to do so much.
right. And I'm a voice teacher,
Yeah.
you know, and but the voice has to be used judiciously in
Hmm.
service to the lyric, not overblow the lyric. Don't overplay the lyric. I don't want to hear quarter notes. I want to hear words. We're the only instrument in the world that plays words.
I love that. I love that. And you say it in the book, and do you think for students who are coming out of a classical or musical theater training, what is that mind shift that has to happen coming into the cabaret world and coming into such a lyric driven world?
Right. Um, uh, I asked I asked Karen Mason this
Hmm.
question in the book, and her answer was very genuine too. And honestly, I'd not thought of it until she said it. She goes, I don't know if what we do can be taught in an undergraduate level,
Hmm.
because in the undergraduate level, there's so many other skills to acquire, and the undergraduate academic process is benchmarks, juries, proving you can do what you do. You're trained for 4 years that you have to prove that you can do what you do, at the end of every semester. So the idea of, now I know how to do what I do, comes with maturity. It naturally does. It's a very rare 20-year-old who can sit back and go, yeah, okay, I know how to do this.
Well, it's
You
an
know?
interesting moment that in Lena's section of the book, where she talks about an early review she got and the
Yes.
reviewer saying no one on the stage should be singing this song, but okay,
Right.
I get it.
Right.
And I find working with students, and that especially students who are coming from the musical theater, performance, putting on a character background, that it's the challenge bringing them into the cabaret world is finding, and I call it the bunny ears version of yourself. It's you in quotes.
Right.
Finding that version of yourself that you're comfortable presenting to the audience that can be in service of the lyric.
Right.
That is a difficult step for some performers to make.
Right.
I'm going to interject here because they stopped drilling for a minute. In Sydney's chapter, what I really loved is the thing that makes all of us us is that we're unique. We are each unique. So whatever energy we bring, I'm singing a song, and then David sings a song, and then Michael sings a song, and then Bobby sings a song, and it's all going to be different because we are unique individuals. And that's really, to me, the gist of what makes it magic on stage is when you bring yourself to a particular song. Because you can do the same song in 6 different voices, and it's going to be a different song each
I think
time.
Nina brings that up in her section
Yes.
as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
Because she always thought about doing I Remember with 6
That's
or
right.
7 different artists
That's right.
with
right.
no changes to the arrangement,
Right.
just to see what comes from them.
And we did that.
Yeah.
We did it. We put up a video with it. It was pretty extraordinary to be a part of, too. Listening to everybody's moment. And some of them were just 2 lines, and it was just amazing.
I pulled her class out of the COVID cobwebs, because when COVID hit, we all just hibernated for a bit, and then I said,
Yeah.
no, come on, we gotta keep working, and that was one of our first projects in her class. Now, I did want to say another idea that we take for granted, but was absolutely revolutionary for a lot of people reading the book, is the fact that you're supposed to do a different arrangement. You're supposed to create your own arrangement. It has to be unique to you. It is not supposed to be just what's on the page. And that is something that nobody else teaches. That is very unique to the world of cabaret.
And Tracy Stark and Alex Ryback really, and Gregory as well, Gregory Ryan,
Yeah.
in that section with the 3 of them. And I loved Tracy when you asked, what should an accompanist or pianist who's looking to get into this world start with? And she's like, go work in one of the piano bars,
Right.
because it's going to build all of those skills, including arrangement on the spot.
Right. Right.
So David, as from a teaching standpoint, because you teach many different styles, how do you approach the difference as a musical theater student comes to you and says they want to try their hand at cabaret?
Right. There's things we do for the acquisition of skill, right? And there are warm-ups for the acquisition of skill. And then there are warm-ups you do before a performance. And they're different because you have the skill and now you're just going to go sing. So you don't have to do everything in your battery of acquisition of skill exercises. You simply have to warm up your voice and be in service to the lyric and the melody and the song in that moment. And so that's the difference, is when someone comes to me, and honestly, this serves theater so well. Because what we want to see also in theater is an authentic representation.
Yes.
We don't want a copy of anything. We want you to come in and be you. God knows there already is an Idina Menzel. There already is a Bette Midler. There already is, we need a you, an authentic you. And I think that's one of the things that cabaret can teach. I think the stepping stone to a professional career in music theater is spending your salad days in the intimate clubs, finding yourself, knowing your music, knowing your material, going in with greater authority into your auditions because you sang that song at a piano bar 12 hours ago.
Yeah.
And you know what response works. You know this song works for you and why. You know it's funny or not. You know where you lose the audience and where you don't. If you can get somebody to look up from their drink and pay attention to you in a club, you're doing something right. And if you can't, then that song is not working for you, right?
Yeah.
So knowing all of that, taking that into a theater audition, and then being able to sit back and go, I know this is what works. This is me. I'm confident.
Yeah, this is who I
Instead
am.
of, this is who I am in this song or any song, instead of the doe ears that walk into the room so many times. It's like, oh, or doe eyes, I should say.
Hmm.
The little girl in the floral dress. David David Friedman said to us, I've taken some cabaret classes from him, and he's a wonderful teacher. And he said that when he auditions for Broadway parts that he's written, he looks for someone that has a real connection to what he wrote or whatever song they're singing. So he, in essence, is looking for that cabaret if you will,
Right.
for what's going to happen on stage later on. So I find that very interesting. And I'm wondering, David, you would know this better, if more Broadway directors are looking for that.
I think it's absolutely true. I mean, I've sat in on a lot of off-Broadway, not Broadway auditions, but I've sat in on a lot of off-Broadway auditions and talked to a lot of casting directors and all that. And it always is the case. Your voice is not what gets you hired.
Yeah.
At a certain level, it is a given that everyone in the room, if you're in the right room, everyone in the room basically kind of looks like you and basically kind of sounds like you. Then you know you're in the right type. So if that is the case, how do they make their decision? Who wins the day? It is connection to lyric, personal connection to self, and how all of that winds up in the room and you are comfortable enough to deliver yourself, And that is a huge part of what cabaret can teach.
Anne Hampton Callaway talks about it in her interview in the book, of taking that intimacy of the small venues that we all play, and how she takes that same style now when she's playing with symphonies.
Yeah. I mean, Barbra Streisand does it at Madison Square Garden. Judy Garland did it at Carnegie Hall. The size of the venue is not what determines
Right.
if the person is using this quote-unquote cabaret performance technique, which is this very personal, intimate delivery, as if everyone in the theater thinks you are talking to them. That's not usual.
And multiple people bring that up in the book. Michael Feinstein brings it up in the book.
Yeah.
Multiple people talk about Bruce Springsteen's recent run on Broadway.
Show, yes.
And how it was a cabaret show.
And that surprised me. You're looking for an aha moment. When 2 or 3 people start to mention that show, I went, oh, wow. The zeitgeist, the thought of all these people going, yeah, look at that. That's an example of that intimate connection on a Broadway stage.
And then the opposite for me that was interesting is that we tried several times to ask Marilyn May, of course, who's been a huge part of our community. And Marilyn was like, I don't really do cabaret. I'm more of a nightclub singer. So she said she didn't know that she could offer what we were going to ask or look for, because it's not the way she sings and presents herself. And, we all think she's just the bee's knees,
Right.
and she is. But she didn't feel comfortable being in So You Want to Sing Cabaret, because that's not the genre that she feels that she's in. Isn't that interesting?
She wants to write her own book. So
well, that
I want
too.
to read that book.
I would
she
love
better
to
write it.
She better write that book.
I would love to read her book.
Yeah.
So talk about how, a little bit about this section and how it has been received from the vocal music community since the book has been out. The how-to section, the beginning to end of putting together your show.
I think there's a lot of surprise at the content, and the fact that we hit a lot of the things, including PR and what makes a good postcard, and whether or not in today's day and age, electronic day and age, do we still need a postcard, and for what purpose, how to build a budget, how to create a team, the different kinds of shows, the theme shows, the American Songbook shows, the composer shows, laying all that out, as you said earlier, Michael, in terms of ABCD, here's how you produce a cabaret show. Again, keeping in mind that we were presenting this to teachers who knew nothing about the genre, but I think from what I'm hearing, everybody's like, we take a lot of classes here in New York, but there's still things in the book that people are saying, when you said such and such, that was really awesome, and I never thought about it. So I think that while our community knows a lot more about those sections because we're actually doing it, other people don't. So it was definitely necessary in the book.
And approaching
the craft, the
go ahead,
craft of how to put a show together has as we document and Sue documents so well, even as to the order of show and what kind of number goes where and what things you have to take into consideration in even your band chart selection, who gets a solo here, who gets, too many of the same types of songs in a row, all these things that we who do this know this. I don't know how we came to know it or how we came to learn it. We learned it through osmosis, but it had never been written down, right? And so whether it has been voice teachers and or singers and or other performance people like music directors, other performers of other genres, etc., who've read the book said, I had no idea. Like you think, okay, yeah, you're going to put a budget together, but you forget this and you forget that. You lay it all out for you. This is what it's going to cost. This is.
We were gentle in this regard, though. I got scolded a couple times because the truth was not pretty. So the chapter got downloaded. And if you want this, add that, and let them do the math, because to show them the math was just too horrifying, as we all know.
As all of us who do it know about the art.
Right.
The math is a bit horrifying, so we amortized it over several performances.
Correct.
So.
Well, and that's what that's what we do, creating the budget for a show.
We do.
And that brings me into putting the show together section, and it was interesting that you got some varying answers to this question when you asked the interviewees, and that is a director necessary?
Yeah. I think it's a new thing. I think the use of a director is one of the things that has recently come about, because I think the genre has slowly begun to turn a bit. The genre has asked more of its participants. And I think it's really clear, evident from the mid-century, 50s, 60s, 70s, what has happened. And I wonder, I'm just now thinking of this aloud, I wonder if it's because of our relationship to the repertoire that was written in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Now we are that so many generations away from it that it somehow needs to be translated through a director. I think young performers, especially today, they look at an American songbook song, a Rodgers and Hart song, let's say, or even later, let's say a John Kander Fred Ebb song. They'll look at that Marvin Hamlish song, and they won't necessarily find the way in. It's musically complex. It's not a dance beat. It's not a repetition of words. You have to really, it taxes your brain. Natalie says this in her chapter 2. This repertoire can really tax a young, new listener, because they're not used to how to listen to this. And they're not used to how to perform it. And so you do need someone sometimes to guide the eye and go, no, this text is this means this, let's take a look at how this whole evening is being shaped. Whereas I think performers like Andrea Marcovici, who never used a director, didn't need to. She lived through it. She had that personal connection to the text. She did it.
But you have someone like Sidney Meyer, who is, in my mind, one of the be-all and end-all of our industry.
Absolutely.
And still uses the director for every one of his solo shows.
Yeah. And he in his chapter, he said, and I actually agree with this very much so, I can put a show together. I wrote the book, but to have someone outside of yourself call you on things. Like Lena Katrakis doesn't let anything get by, and I think I see the classes all like this, and I do it in class. The class, and Lena's like, nah, not buying it. To have that person that will say, you're acting your way through this, or I'm calling BS on this because I don't feel it from you the way I know that you can present it. So I always have someone outside of myself, just as a second eye, and I think that's the term Sidney used too, to have that second eye to kind of keep you from your bad self. Some people, especially young people, talk. I remember sitting in many, many shows and Julie Wilson saying, "Stop talking, just sing," People want to hear themselves talk, and to have that director edit and get you from point A to C in a cleaner way that suits you, makes you present more like a professional. So I think someone up and coming maybe doesn't want to spend a lot of money and just try their hand at it, but if the very least they take classes from some of these famous directors, get that feedback, and then I would recommend a new person get a director initially, though.
Important. I think it's very important, again, because the young person's desire to prove everything about their life
in one show.
It just happens.
Yeah.
20s are about proving everything, and the 30s are like a slight extension of that. By the time you're 40, you think you know what you're doing, and by 50, you don't care if anybody, that's just the truth.
Don't even talk to me about 60, I'll tell you.
So
we'll have that discussion off camera.
I also think that's why a lot of older artists are attracted to this genre, because they have a fuller ownership of what they have to say and how they want to say it. And it's possible, I think, an older artist over 35, let's say, might not need a director as much as a younger artist, because that younger artists need to prove it's insidious in ways, and it gets in the way of the translation of your authentic self. And so you need a director to go, no, you don't have to do that. That doesn't look like what you think it looks like. That just looks like you're pushing.
All three music directors say in their chapter, they can't be that outside eye.
No, they can't. Because you can't see.
They can help you with the arrangement and finding that authenticity with the lyric.
Yeah.
But they can't be that outside eye of how it's coming across to the audience, because they're sitting behind you.
Yeah, and they have a lot to do.
There's
88 keys on the keyboard. There's a lot to do.
I remember Tracy saying that, saying exactly that she can't really be that outside eye for the shows. But I've watched many videos, and I realized, wow, this show is really good. The singer's really good, because she didn't really see the show until she actually got to see the video later on.
Yeah. I often think that even about myself, honestly. I never like what I do. I can't stand to listen to myself or whatever. But years go by, and I'll watch a video back, and I'll go, oh, okay, all right, that wasn't so bad. You need a little objectivity from it.
That's why I like to have, when I'm doing a run of a show, to do a couple at the beginning and wait a while and come back, so that I can sit with it more. And I'll be honest, I go back and watch the video to check and to be like, oh, I see what my director was saying now.
Yes, exactly.
But even as reviewers, many times as reviewers, I have gone back to see a show. Someone's asked me to come early in the run, and I focus more on up and comers, and I love to see where the show ends up 4, 5, 6 shows later, because it's a different performer. It's just getting that confidence on stage and everything. And then sometimes I have actually done a follow-up review for someone because the show changed so drastically.
Yes. Yeah, I will say, at Cabaret Hotspot, of which Sue and I are the managing co-editors, it's happened to me, and it's happened to a few of our other reviewers, that we'll see a show and decide not to publish the review because there's enough there that it's... The artist should know the information, but there's enough there that it's not going to help them. And so I will very often share the review with the artist or with their management. And I'll say, you know what, we're not going to publish this, but I want you to know this. And the feedback is always very welcomed. And I've been more than once invited back to the second reprise or third reprise of that artist's show. And it's completely different, and they've tightened everything up, and they've done a great job. So I do think in the end, a director and someone to give you that extra eye turns out to be important, to make sure that you are translating, as Lena says, translating correctly, that what you want to do is actually being done.
David, can you turn your mic up a little bit? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Sure. Well, I hope I can.
That's much better.
I'll just get
closer. All needed.
Yeah.
Do you two use directors for your shows?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Lena's my go-to girl. It's funny, I came back full circle with Lena. I studied with Helen Baldessari 30-something years ago, and then once you're no longer a beginner with Helen passes you off to Lena, so I went right to Lena, and now here I am 30 years later, full circle with Lena, and she was like, see, I could have told you 30 years ago, you should have just stuck with me. And I've worked with great directors, but there's something simpatico about her and I and our energy and how we work together.
It is finding that team that gets you and gets your artistry and can help you bring that authentic version of yourself into the material. You need that relationship that works. My team and I, we've been together for multiple shows now, and I know that Jay Rogers can look at me and go, "What was that, honey?"
Yeah.
And I trust him.
I met Lena, officially met her, interviewing her for the book. And I observed several of her classes, her Saturday advanced class, and fell in love with it and wound up joining the class. And she is also my go-to director, and it's a joy. It's a joy.
And it should be. Singing and music should be a joy. When it starts to be, labored and not fun, go find another team, like the song says. Go find another class.
No,
Seriously.
I would love to work with Jeff Harner. I'd love to work with
so
Lenny.
many.
There's so many wonderful, and I'd love to work with Jay. Now, Jay was also, a Sylvia Bills in La Grande Chena. So Jay and Sydney and Bruce, all three great cabaret iconic people, passed through La Grande Chena as well.
Jay Rogers and Jerry Geddes were two of my other really favorite directors that I had over time, and if you want to have fun, man, Jay's a good time.
Yes, I will say whenever I have a rehearsal with Jay, I do book an extra half an hour because I know we're gonna go on some tangent, laughing forever. I want to bring us back because we talked about it a little bit earlier, but to really focus on the intimacy of the song and how that's so different, how a cabaret show is different from a musical theater recital in a small room.
Right. And I can't help but frame that through what we're now all going through, because it now all has to be through a camera. And how can that intimacy be translated to the camera, right? But let's begin with your first premise of the musical theater singer who is doing, a set of songs in the crook of the piano and calls that a cabaret. Right? Most of the time, that young singer is still performing those songs as if they were in the original show.
Right.
From the point of view of the original show. And so that's not a cabaret performance technique. That is a music theater performance technique in a small space. So cabaret performance technique is to turn that completely around. And who in your real life could you say those words to and they would make sense? And who is that person, and what do you want from them, and why don't they give it to you right away? Because that's the obstacle you got to get over. And then how do you get over that obstacle? And where are you while you're trying to get over that obstacle? And what time is it? Those are the 5 W's.
It becomes very much kind of like the actor studio method work.
It absolutely is. But for yourself, not for any other character. For yourself, And that kind of personal investment in a song, I think that's what's expected. I mean, I do believe that great music theater artists simply do that. Karen Mason does that, whether she's in music theater or cabaret. Betty Buckley does that.
But we're so careful to talk about performance isn't therapy and performance is entertainment. So a lot of these songs, like I was in class this past week and just wiped out with a memory I didn't expect to say setting the song up, and it just plopped me in this place, and then I started to sing, and to have the safety and the security of doing that in a class with a bunch of people who don't judge you, because I am loath to see those classes where the teachers just want to get you to cry. It's just like, ew, I don't want to do that. But if it's a real genuine emotion that you have evoked in yourself, you have to do that work somewhere to then find a way to pull it back, to then make it entertaining and make it not any less connected, but less connected in a way that now can be a performance that still has that strong energy.
It's not as raw to yourself.
It's not as raw, and you get this from getting up and doing it over and over again, and finding a place to channel rehearsal.
Right.
Yeah.
And, vocal technique, the world of the voice teacher, the vocal coach, the music director, the people who look at the little black dots on the page, they look at that with a different part of the brain. And they want all that stuff that's written on the page to happen. And they try to communicate that with a different part of the brain. Well, the voice is neurological, you know. If I tried to think about my voice in manner of what all the little muscles had to do and what acoustics I had to fire off to make something happen, that's incapacitating, right? If you looked at your foot and had to think about all the muscles in your foot that had to do whatever they do to get you to walk, you'd never take a step again, right? But all you have to do is think, I want to go there. And the thought and the motivation of where you want to go and why you want to go there fire off all the muscles and give you the energy to actually do it. And in a very unique way, cabaret performance coaching is dovetails vocal technique, because they get there they say the same things in a very different way. Mm-hmm. You know, the intimacy, the intimate thought serves the vocal technique always. Always. It never does not serve the vocal technique, right? It never gets in the way.
It's amazing too how when you think, you know, you angst over a note that's coming up that you know that's kind of on the outs, if you're placed in your song and you need to say whatever you're going to say, all of a sudden you're singing here on your speak voice and you're pulling notes down and pulling notes up, and you get those notes, and when you go back and listen to it, you're like, what was I so worried about? Because you were thinking so much about the note
underneath you.
Right.
When you're in the moment, it'll be there.
But if you're also thinking about your who, what, where, when, and why, which is one of my favorite parts of David's contribution to the book in that chapter, who, what, where, when, and why, to have that in place, you're not thinking about, oh, here comes that big note. You're thinking about where you have prepared yourself to sing from, and all of a sudden these glorious notes happen, lows and highs that you never thought you even had. That you maybe don't even get when you vocalize, you know?
You said something very interesting. You said you're in your speak voice, right? And so that's really a key to the vocal technique of this whole genre, is that it is speech driven. It is not lofted resonance for the most part. You may have some singers who use lofted resonance, and for those of you who know what I mean, God bless you. For those of you who don't, it's kind of like the high soprano operatic type of sound. For the most part, we don't have that type of lofted resonance in this American songbook genre, and certainly not in a pop genre, which is the bulk of what we do in cabaret. The singers who train to use their voice in that way, to self-amplify, that is the whole purpose for the low larynx and high palates, and they must self-amplify. They are doing something that is very different than what we do using this mic.
Right.
Okay. And so since the advent of this mic, communication has become different. Nobody has to hit the back wall anymore. We all can be in service to the lyric more. And you see this on Broadway. You see this time and time again, where with revivals of older shows, keys are changed, mostly lower. Not because the singer can't sing the notes, it's because there is no longer an acoustic reason for us to sacrifice the word. There's no longer that reason. So when Marin Maisie did Kiss Me Kate, she did a lot of it down from what it originally was, right? Okay, that's fine. It doesn't matter. It's music theater, and we must be in service to the word in that way as well. So cabaret hits this very hard. Cabaret insists upon this, whereas music theater is just now catching up to this.
And it's kind of where cabaret has been in that intimate moment.
Always.
Yeah.
From day one. Always. Yeah. Because even without a mic, in a small room, you didn't need a mic. You were still talking to people who were 5 feet away from you. So it was never that need to hit the back wall. Right.
In the research I've done for the cabaret history class I do through 92nd Street Y, which for those of you listening, starts again next Monday, if you're interested.
And all the information's on Cabaret Hotspot.
Yes.
Going back and finding those rare recordings from the 40s even
Right.
in the rooms. And some of those were they took, into a film, they brought someone
Right.
in, but that intimacy was still there.
Yeah.
Now, David, I know you're working on something for the moment we're all in as we move to this, instead of the three of us sitting at 92nd Street Y having this conversation together, we've
Yeah.
moved into this divide via the camera. How are you finding teaching that way and dealing with, there's a lot of latency issues, especially
Right.
if the music is not where the singer is. What are you finding with that?
So our new COVID reality has put a dampener on what we all want to do, is that intimate connection, not only with the audience, but with our music, with our musicians, with that give and take of singing live with someone, which we didn't think was going to be possible until we all get back in the room. I have kind of diligently been working since March, researching different technologies, different platforms for singers to be able to do this. And there are several that actually do work really well for different purposes. When I'm teaching a voice lesson, and different purposes and different budgets, right?
Okay.
Because we are also living in a very financially stressful time. So sure, the Met can absolutely do a simultaneous telecast with Tokyo String Quartet because they have a T1 connection and they cost them, $100,000. Sure, that can happen. But for most of us who are on our regular internet connection, even if it's that high speed that you can get into your home, we are dealing with issues of latency. And latency is the opposite of intimacy.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but there are some programs that I've found that I use for teaching voice. A lot of times I use internet MIDI.
Okay.
Because MIDI information does not travel like audio information. It doesn't travel through a mic. It travels peer-to-peer, from computer to computer, right? So this peer-to-peer connection, I can play my electric keyboard, and it goes immediately to the student out of their computer or out of their electric keyboard if we're connected that way, So that has very little latency in it. And I can manage most lessons like that very well. The human neurology doesn't really perceive latency if it's less than like 30. That's the 20 milliseconds, 21 thousandths of a second, right? So if you can get that down, okay, now Zoom, where we are on now, it looks like we're all talking together, but Zoom has built into it a 200 millisecond delay. The reason it looks like we're all together is because Zoom buffers that information. It holds on to a certain amount of information so that it can stream it out, continuously. And so we all look like we're talking to each other in real time, but in actuality, we are not, okay? I'll prove this to you, okay? Do this with me. I'm gonna ta ta ta, and you match me, okay? Ta 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 ta. It's cacophony, right? It's three different ta ta tas because we're not really in sync. But there are programs that can get you perceptually in sync. One that I'm using a lot right now is Jam Kazam, which I use for rehearsals with my music directors. Oh my God, it's thrilling to be able to sing with someone live. And Jam Kazam you can use with an acoustical piano or a digital piano. All you need is the mic and the audio interface, and it does the work to reduce the latency down to 20, 30, 40 milliseconds. So I've worked with several different, I've worked with Chris Denny, worked with Mark Hartman, worked with Gregory Teroyan. I'm going to work with Becky Menzie in Chicago, on this set of COVID creations, this set of songs that we're all working on together. It's fascinating what can be done.
If any of our participants tonight are interested in more on this topic, you are teaching a class on this next week, correct?
Yes, Tuesday the 11th. Thank you for
Okay.
asking. Tuesday the 11th. A lot of people have asked me to do this since March. I've been doling out the information via Facebook piecemeal. And Sue actually said, why don't you just teach a 2-hour class on this? I thought, okay, I will. So it's going to be 2 hours, which deals with everything starting from budgetary concerns. What's the cheapest way to work around this? And what's the most professional way to work around this? So the price points vary, the hardware and software needs vary, etc. So you'll find ways to work around it in your budget and your technical ability at the time. And something I am big on, with my students, I mean, as a voice teacher, I think our job now, if we're coaching performance on this Brady Bunch set of boxes, then our job now is to not only meet the student where they are technique-wise, but to meet them where they are technology-wise and encourage them to develop their technology just like we encourage them to develop their technique.
But it also depends on the level singer and what their intent is, and really what your personal belief in is where this is all going, and whether or not we're going to be in this for a longer run than we think. So that's all a consideration of all of this, and what equipment you buy and whatever, how you set up to look like an office or a club. And there's a whole bunch of wonderful things that are coming out of this too. Lenny Watts, for example, the other day said that he's seeing a lot of people do really, really good intimate work in this way, because they don't have the nerves of 50 people sitting in front of them, and performers that he is seeing in a whole new light because this is working for them. So there's ways of using it.
Friends of mine, people teach on the collegiate level, that was the one plus as they moved to online work with their acting students, is they were finding a new level of intimacy. Especially in monologue work in this. So if any of the participants are interested, I will on Wednesday, once the Y post the video of our chat to their private channel, and you get access to that, I will also send in that email the information about David's class on Tuesday. So that if you're interested in that, you can sign up for that.
Did you pick a winner for the book yet?
We're almost getting to that, because David and Sue have graciously offered that one of our participants this evening, you see me looking down, I'm ripping the names into pieces right now. But as I'm doing that, before we get to the group conversation section for the last 20 minutes that we are together, I always end with the same question of my guest. And it is kind of the topic of our whole chat today, but each of you, and Sue, I'll go to you first. In 2 sentences, what is cabaret?
My life. It's what I do now, and it gives me joy, and allows me to communicate with people in a way that there's no other way to communicate the way you can communicate through cabaret and singing on stage, as long as your heart is in giving forward to the people in front of you.
David?
What is cabaret?
Nobody asked us, huh?
Yeah, right. Nobody asked us this. Thanks, Michael.
You're welcome.
What is cabaret? The hardest thing in the world to do, and the most rewarding, I would say. The most truthful way I can express my art. That's what cabaret is.
That should have been in the book, damn it.
I guess so. Damn, why didn't you ask me earlier?
Now.
Really? Thanks a lot, Michael.
So now if you have a question for David or for Sue or even for myself throughout this conversation, you can put that in the chat, or if you'd like, I'm going to go to gallery view for myself.
Good. Cool. I want to see everybody.
Cameras back on if you'd like to. Bring your cameras back on so you can see. There's Brian's back.
Yeah, I'm going to have to put on my glasses to see everybody.
So if you're still with us, bring those cameras. We did get a couple comments from our good friend Bobby Horowitz.
Hi, Bobby.
We were chatting. So I will go to some of those. Bobby said she was in her late 30s when she began thinking about cabaret, and in her near 40 when she started performing, and it's really where she found herself, found her artistry through cabaret work.
Yeah.
She also mentioned, David, that some of the things you were saying about the intimacy and how to approach the lyric reminds her very much of when she used to be friendly with Stella Adler.
Yes.
And Stella would talk about cabaret work, and that
Yes.
Stella would have very much appreciated what you said.
Thank you, Bobby.
Does anyone else have any questions for our guest? Oh, yes, Brian, I see your hand raised. Feel free to turn your mic on if you want to ask it yourself.
Great, thanks. Hey, thank you so much. What a wonderful conversation. This is just really inspiring. And also thank you so much for delving into the post-COVID world of cabaret. I was all set to go with my show with Michael Matsuki. We had a date. We had 2 dates in April. The Zen of Show Tunes. Everything was set. Postcards ready, and then this happened.
Yeah.
And I have no idea when the rooms may open again. I have no idea whether any of you have any, psychic abilities and know. And so I've been on the fence about what to do next and how to do it, and whether to wait for the rooms or whether to learn about all this wonderful technology to do it on camera, because I love live. I love the live performance. So I guess it's half a comment and half a question.
Yeah.
Wait for the rooms to open, and when will they? Or just
I'm
dive
going to tell
into.
you. Yeah, I'll tell you this. Sue and I have been in discussion with a lot of the rooms, forming a little committee to sort of give them help and input and what do they need to open up. And they're really dependent upon the politics
rules
of the state and city and what's going to happen, and when does phase 4 include in-person dining, because they can't open a room just for your show. They got to sell food and drink, right? And so the economics of it are against us right now. Now, even when shows open up, we will have some sort of social distancing guidelines. Can you imagine Don't Tell Mama with social distancing rules? There'll be 5 people in that room.
Yeah.
Okay, so at that point, there will be, and I know it from several of the clubs, not all of them, but several of the clubs are really moving towards live streaming cameras at the back of the cabaret room, so that you'll be able to sell virtual tickets, not just tickets in the room, but virtual tickets. And that I was talking to one of them in particular, club owner, service that he's looking at will continue to sell the tickets for your performance. It'll be recorded, so you will have then kind of a residual stream.
But here's the other thing too: the bigger rooms, the Beachman, Green Room, 54. What are some of the other? Oh, the Triad. 120 seats. You can socially distance and still get 40, 50 people, which, let's face it, that's what a lot of people's audiences are.
Right.
It's not optimal.
That's
and
a good
yes,
night.
it's a good night for a lot of people to get 40. So with those kinds of seats and availability, so if you can get 40 people in a room, you do your show, you socially distance your band, you're live streaming from the back, the opportunity and the ability to then sell tickets by Eventbrite or whatever you're going to do. My Uncle Ken in Florida can see me. He's never been able to see me before.
Yeah.
So it opens up a whole new window of people that have never been able to come to see you. And that's money.
Right.
Now, there's a negotiable thing with the club, whether or not they want to get a 20, 80, 30, 70 split or whatever. But,
We're in
I
new
think that's where they're
territory
going.
financially.
I think that's where they're going in terms of what might happen.
The short answer is you're going to have to learn how to play in front of a camera anyway, because that's going to be a reality from this moment forward. Whether you have 5, 10, 15 people in the audience or not, you're going to have to know this technology. In the meantime, while we are in this more isolated experience, it is possible to rehearse in real time with Michael Matsuki. Brian. It really is possible, where you will feel like you're in the same room. Today I had a session with Gregory Troyan. I felt like crying because you're singing with someone who is responding to you in the moment.
It's emotional
very different
to do
than singing
again
in the
after
chat.
not having been able to do it. Yeah.
It
And,
really is.
yeah. And Brian, you could, I think all of us are kind of moving forward, if there's a second wave of this, if there's no cure, whatever, just preparing ourselves to do it in a way that we can. And then there's lots of places like Stage It and all these other kind of
Right.
places where you can
Vox
actually,
Pops, lots
yeah,
of.
there's quite a few of those. And I think that down the road, David and I will probably
gonna
do a
do-
class on that as
And
well.
we'll do an article on that. Yeah.
An article
Cabaret
on the
Hotspots.
different ways that you can kind of, what the splits are and stuff like that. So watch for that on Cabaret Hotspots. We'll be doing an article on that. And I would highly recommend, not just because he's teaching it, I'm going to be in the room on Tuesday night too, on August 11th for that class that he's going to teach. Because
I'll be
he's
taking it as well.
talking about all, I just got my little Behringer box right here
Yeah.
so that I can get going. So,
Yeah.
There's an entry level point financially, and the entry level point is about $200. That's what it is. That's your entry level. Now, if you already have a Blue Yeti mic, it may be less or more. You can always spend more.
or you have a Shure mic like I
Right.
have behind me
Right.
or whatever.
Your
Yeah.
entry level for an audio box and a Shure SM58 is $209. So that's what it takes. Now, you got to be wired in. Okay, this is all stuff I'm going to tell you on Tuesday. But forget
And saying
Wi-Fi.
not even looking at audio.
Yeah,
A lot of
okay.
people are also going to the ring light.
That's
Yeah.
right. Of course.
That's the
Yeah.
difference for me without.
That's right.
I know.
There's all sorts of right. So their
Yeah,
production
great with the
values.
ring light.
How are you going to turn your space into a theater type space? Notice Sue has that lovely black
This-
curtain.
This curtain is a photographer's curtain on a rack that I got for $70 at Amazon. It's just
Yeah.
a rack with a Muslim hanger, and so there's ways of doing it on the cheap
There are
to
ways
create.
now, on Tuesday, I'm just talking about the technical aspect, not the design aspect. But there are ways of doing it, and the entry level point is about $200, and you can spend more after that. But it can be done. It really can be, and it's thrilling when you get to do it. And then can share it again. I know why you all got into this. I know what it feels like to sing with a pianist who's right there breathing with you. That's very different than doing this with a track.
Do we have any other questions or comments? You can raise your hand either on camera or in the app, and I will see you and invite you to unmute your mic. Yes, Clea. Go ahead and unmute your mic.
You could also just press down the space bar, and you can talk if holding the space bar down.
Okay. Oh, hello there.
There you are, Clea. How are you? Great. What's your question?
Great.
Bobby, I'll come to you next.
Yeah, I've enjoyed this so much. I can't wait to get your book. But is it possible for someone who really doesn't feel comfortable in any kind of acting role to be at all successful in cabaret if they feel the music to such a great depth and the lyric?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's that's one of our points, that you don't have to be, like when someone says, "Oh, you're such a good actress," I don't necessarily take that as a compliment because I'm feeling my way through a song rather than acting it. So I prefer not to let the acting show.
Right.
So in essence, you're a perfect candidate to just sing your feelings and just be on stage as who you are, expressing yourself,
There may be hope for me. Who knows?
There is hope for you, Clea. I've had Clea in class before, and there's
good.
most definitely hope for you.
I can't wait for Brandy's to open. A quick question, Michael. Do you think Brandy's is ever going to open? Are they surviving coronavirus?
Brandy's is one of the piano bars in the cabaret world, and they are now starting to keep the bar open. They are starting on Thursday night a weekly live stream just to support the bar.
Nice.
Some
Oh,
of the
good.
staff each week, 3 or 4 staff members and 1 or 2 guest artists will be submitting videos, or a couple people will be gathering in the bar, and they will be doing a live stream, and it will be strictly to support the bar and
Good.
help the
Wow.
bar pay their rent
Right.
as
Good.
they stay closed.
Oh, awesome. Okay,
Bob-
thank you.
Bobby, did you want to unmute your mic? You look like you had something to say.
And Clea, remember to mute again.
Yes, thank you. I will do that right now.
Okay.
There you go.
No, I was just going to say how glad I am you're doing this. I've got all the lighting wrong because I was stuck on a different meeting
Right.
about song writing and how it's very confusing now to know who are the people who are giving you the rights to have your songs put on Facebook, put on shows like this, put on. It's become a whole questioning area.
Well, you know, Bobby, you bring up a really good point.
It is a good point.
And early on, about April, I spoke to someone at ASCAP because I figured, oh, this is going to rear its head. That everyone's singing online and singing all these songs that really are copyrighted, and what's going to happen. So ASCAP has a website streaming license. It's less than $300 a year, which then gives you the right to have that copyrighted material on your website. Okay, so you gotta get that. If
Or
you
your
then,
YouTube channel, I think. You
well,
can,
here's YouTube. You have to
It's-
take the YouTube embed, you know, the video
Right.
window, and put it on your website
on your website.
and play it from your website.
I do have it. This is Harry Fox.
Say again.
Say that, Bobby?
Harry Fox.
Harry
Yeah.
Fox. Well, Harry Fox is for licensing the sound, right? Yeah, sound. Like I'm developing a website where I need a lot of mechanical licenses for sound without the page.
But even if someone was doing an open mic, like Lenny doing Singapalooza or something like that, he should technically have this license to then present all
Yes.
these singers, you know, so that way rights are being paid.
It's as if the clubs, you know, the same as the clubs paying their
Right.
ASCAP and BMI.
the
That's
cabaret
right.
license,
And
yeah.
that
But-
covers you.
But as
Yes,
written
legally.
right now, if the club has that and they put on an open mic, it's not necessarily covered on that open mic because
Unless
it's a
you're
different
physically
medium.
in the club.
Right, it's a different
Yes,
medium.
unless you're physically in the
So-
club. So
You do need to think about protecting yourself in this way because if not this year, next year,
They're
people
gonna
are
come
going to
at
start
us.
coming looking
Yeah.
for money.
yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. And they should, you know.
I am that.
Yeah, Bobby?
I am that. I work.
Oh,
I think
Leslie,
I think
did you want to
Leslie
say
had a
something,
question.
Leslie?
Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't mean to, in regards to the rights to the music, sorry, my Toto showed up. I was watching a performer, and they were singing a song and got cut off immediately.
Wow.
Oh, yes.
Yard.
Mm-hmm.
And they recognized the song, and so everybody had paid to be in the
Yes.
watch the performance.
Wow.
They had to switch to another thing, and it was very interesting because it was recognized as a karaoke track, but it wasn't,
Right.
and I think that's what shut them down. But it was
Was it StreamYard going to YouTube?
it was not
Okay.
because so it was they went to a different format, and then they realized that it was an orchestration of a song. It wasn't.
Oh, somebody took someone else's orchestration?
Right.
No, I think StreamYard recognized it as karaoke.
Oh, I see.
Mm.
If the performer had made her own orchestration of it because it had
Oh.
breaks in it. She was
Right.
monetized.
Right.
So then they rebooted on a different form of StreamYard.
Yes.
I don't know what it was. And then
It's
we
interesting.
watched.
Yes.
So
There
it-
are bots. There
but
are
I
bots
was
that
super
do that.
shocked.
Yeah.
There was all of a sudden like, what happened?
Yeah.
Sondheim is notorious for making people take down his music because if it's not done exactly or if someone's doing a parody, he's not happy. He has actually hired people to troll and follow and see whenever he comes up. And he doesn't sue or anything. He just says, please take it down. So he, unless you're really doing his music exactly as he wrote it, he has an issue with it. He's notorious.
Interesting. Well, we are getting very close to our time for this evening. Before I close up, I do want to
Oh, yeah.
draw a name from the Sparkly Cup for
I
who
just
gets
wanna
the
say
free
thank
book.
Oh, Jackie has
Jackie
hers.
has one.
Okay,
Yay.
Jackie. Thank you, Jackie.
For this evening.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
And the name that was drawn is Leslie.
Leslie.
So Leslie Guerrero, you win a copy of the book. We will get that mailed to you.
Michael's going to send me your address. I'll put it in the mail tomorrow, Leslie.
And I want to, before I thank our guests, I do want to give a couple quick announcements. again, the Lolly Lard Pop has just arrived.
I'm reading that book, believe it.
The 96th Street Y's Cabaret History class, which is a 4-week lecture series about the history of this art form, begins again next Monday and runs for the rest of August. Information for that will be in the email on Wednesday as well. Cool. Cabaret Conversations picks up again in September, on Monday, September 14th, with the amazing Karen Mason.
Is it the 14th? I thought it was a Saturday.
Nope,
I
it's
think
Monday.
It is Monday. Did it go back? Because originally I think it was a Saturday. All right. Anyway.
Always been a Monday.
Always a Monday. Okay,
Yep.
I'll make sure that that's changed. I think I have it wrong.
So on Monday with September 14th with Karen Mason, and then not on the website yet, but I'll announce it here. In October, I will be joined by Natalie Douglas for the series as well. So thank you again to Sue Matsuki and David Sabella. Thank you to all of our participants tonight. I will send the email with David's information for his class and all the other information we talked about in an email on Wednesday. Make sure to go and get your copy of this book. We barely scratched the surface tonight of the information.
Enjoy the book.
You can get it at cabaretHotspot.com.
Yes, and there's also extra information on cabaretHotspot.com, which is run by David and Sue. I will include that link as well in the email on Wednesday. So thank you again to our guests. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Michael, for having us. Really appreciate
Cabaret
it.
Conversations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night, Sue.
Bye-bye.